This is our top story at this hour. Hundreds of protesters held demonstrations in Beijing and Shanghai as protests over stringent COVID restrictions flare up for the third day. In Shanghai, there were clashes reported between demonstrators and the police. The protests have spread to several cities in the wake of a deadly fire in the country's far west. More in this next report.
Clashes erupted between demonstrators and police in Shanghai on Sunday as protests over China's stringent COVID restrictions flared for a third day and spread to several cities. Video from the scene in Shanghai showed police seizing and then carrying away one protester. The wave of civil disobedience is unprecedented in mainland China, where room for dissent has been all but eliminated under President Xi Jinping, as frustration mounts over his signature zero COVID policy. Protesters also took to the streets in the cities of Wuhan and Chengdu on Sunday. In Beijing, small gatherings of people held peaceful vigils, while students on numerous university campuses around China gathered to demonstrate over the weekend. The protests come after a deadly apartment fire on Thursday in the country's far west, where millions of residents have been under some of the country's longest lockdowns, barred from leaving their homes for as long as 100 days. Video obtained by Reuters showed residents chanting "Lift the COVID lockdown" and arguing with guards in hazmat suits after the fire led to accusations that lockdowns were a factor in the blaze that killed 10 people. Officials have denied that COVID measures hampered escape and rescue efforts. China has stuck with Xi's zero COVID policy even as much of the world has lifted most restrictions. While low by global standards, China's case numbers have hit record highs for days with nearly 40,000 new infections on Saturday, prompting yet more lockdowns in cities across the country.
Well, for more on this, joining us now is Jean-Pierre Cabestan, live from Hong Kong. He is an emeritus professor of political science at the Hong Kong Baptist University. Jean-Pierre, thank you very much for joining us, and it's great to have you on the program. China's major stock indices and its currency tanked today as widespread protests against the country's stringent COVID-19 restrictions over the weekend roiled investor sentiments. We know that China has always been defiant, but doesn't this whole situation worry the government even a little bit?
Yes, I think it worried the government very much, because these anti-COVID protests have morphed into a much more political movement, criticizing not only the leadership of the party, but also Xi Jinping himself, asking him to step down, also criticizing the one-party system, asking for more freedom and democracy. Of course, that's maybe a call made by a minority of students, but and elite members in the urban areas of China, but it has spread around the country very quickly, and it looks like there's a momentum here, which the government will need to take into account.
Jean-Pierre, Shanghai residents are relentless. They are speaking out against the policy. They also want the president to step down, but their calls are seemingly landing on deaf ears. Who or what will come to their rescue, you think?
Well, I think the Xi Jinping is not in a mood to compromise on this issue, and let alone on the one-party system and the way that China is ruled by the Communist Party. So what I predict is, of course, on the one hand, a repression of the people who went on the street and protested. You know, you have surveillance cameras everywhere in China, so it's easy to spot protesters and to arrest them even later. The other thing is, I think they will have to adjust their so-called dynamic zero COVID policy and to gradually move towards an exit strategy. The problem is we don't have any idea how this exit strategy will look like, and the recent decisions made by the central government have actually been to decentralize decisions, to let local authorities make their own judgment about how much they can relax the restrictions and move towards another more balanced strategy in order to manage the COVID-19 pandemic.
Jean-Pierre, what do these white paper protests symbolize? And some experts say that the public discontent may continue over the next few months. Do you agree with the experts?
It's hard to tell. What I would say is that, the anti-COVID, confrontations between the local communities and local authorities have multiplied over the last few months. Now, that the first time that these anti-COVID protests have become political, have turned into political protests against the government and the regime itself. Now, I think quite a number of people will be worried and afraid of supporting this movement. But it symbolizes, I think, the very, very a lack of patience, now within the society regarding the authorities. And the fact that China is the odd man out. I mean, China is really an exception and looks like living on another planet than the rest of the world. And people watch TV, they watch particularly the football competition in Qatar, and they see that everyone around the world doesn't wear a mask anymore, while China is, confined to lockdowns and masks everywhere, and so the restriction to normal life are still pretty large and constraining. So that's why I think people are so upset. So, but the whether it's going to become a more articulated and organized movement against the regime and asking for democracy, I think it's too early to tell.
All right, we'll have to end this conversation here. Thank you very much for your input. I've been talking to Jean-Pierre Cabestan. Thank you. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.